Hello and welcome to PocketGamer.biz's weekly bite-sized news roundup, and it's for the week ending July the 19th. In the UK it's been a rather hot week for us. We're not used to this kind of weather and a bit of humidity. I know the rest of you around the world will be laughing at that, but I'm trying to cool down with some sunglasses at least. And it's been a kind of a bit of a summary. I guess we're entering the summer period now. It's not getting kind of big breaking news, but there's always a lot of trends to I guess consider, and we'll see kind of what they mean in a couple of weeks' time. Let's start with some numbers. I'm a big fan of numbers. So one number, not a bad one for Gameloft. So it announced that it's a new free-to-play game, Despicable Me Minions Rush. Let's get that right, yeah. So that's an endless runner, obviously playing onto the new Despicable Me 2 film. That's done 50 million downloads, which maybe for some companies is not seen as a vast number, but for Gameloft, which has kind of been playing around with free-to-play, often it's still sticking to paid games with in-app purchases in them. So that's pretty good numbers for it, and it's actually kind of heading up the top grossing charts. So that's something we'll be looking at in the next week or so. Another kind of bigger number is from Korean publisher and developer Gamevil. It's announced this week 300 million lifetime downloads on iOS and Android. Pretty impressive. Obviously 300 million, that's across quite a lot of games. It's now quite heavily involved in publishing third-party games. But what's interesting in this case is the period of time that it's gone from 100 million to 200 million downloads, and then 200 million to 300 million downloads is decreasing. So there's about I think 7 months between 200 million and 300 million downloads compared to 9.5 for the 100 to 200 million. So it's kind of speeding up. I guess that's kind of showing particularly the pace of the Korean market. Something else in the Korean market is Kakao. So Kakao Talk is one of the big messaging programs over there, apps over there. So it's got about 100 million users spread around Korea and some of the Southeast Asian countries. But it also has a games platform, which is it's a bit like, it's compared a lot to Facebook. It's quite viral, quite spammy still at the moment. But it's been very popular for casual games. And Kakao have announced that their games platform in the first half of 2013 has generated over $300 million in revenue. So 70% of that will go to the developers and publishers, and Kakao takes 30% as its margin. Obviously, that means it's taking Google Play or iOS will take the first 30%, and then Kakao takes 30% of the 70%. So it kind of, you can work out how that kind of thing happens. Some other even bigger numbers from that region is, and I guess probably the big news of the week really is Baidu, which is kind of often said to be China's version of Google. So it's a big search engine kind of company. It's made a $1.9 billion kind of bid for 91 Wireless. 91 Wireless operates a whole bunch of Android app stores in China, generally seen as being, if not the biggest one, certainly one of the two leading kind of distributors of Android apps and games. So that's, if that goes through, which everyone seems to expect it will, that's going to be one of the biggest deals of that type for that kind of company in Chinese history. And then sets up kind of Baidu, which has been struggling a little bit in terms of mobile distribution. It kind of sets that up as a player behind Tencent, which has a mobile QQ and WeChat as platforms, and there's also 360. So there's a few kind of these kind of big beasts now looking to Android distribution in China, which is obviously the big growth hardware situation. So what other news has been going on? Some other big numbers. US web and mobile free-to-play publisher Kabam. So that did a private share of some of its shares. So it's kind of interesting. It was basically to allow some of the senior management and staff to kind of vest some of their shares. Because obviously Kabam is having a very kind of good time at the moment. So it had revenue of $180 million in 2012, looking to do $300 million this year. And so while the valuation of the company is increasing, it's very hard for people who got in early to actually extract value from the shares unless it IPOs. So this is a kind of way of getting some value out of the shares. Obviously, because they've sold some shares, that means there's a new valuation on the entire company, which is now supposedly valued at $700 million, which obviously a large amount of money. Whether it could be more, could be less, hard to tell, I suppose. I guess we had with Supercell, it did a similar kind of private share kind of placement earlier on this year, and that valued it at $800 million. I mean, they're quite different companies. Obviously, Supercell's very small, effectively 100 people, 2 games only on iOS. Kabam is massive, 700 people, a lot of dozens of games, looking to get heavily into publishing. There's a lot of stuff still on web, even though the majority of revenue now is on mobile. But still, $700 million is a nice chunk of cash. Now the rumours obviously are Kabam will at some point IPO, maybe towards the end of next year. We'll have to kind of see what happens there. And kind of talking about kind of money again. I don't know. I just talk about numbers and money all the time. There's kind of an interesting thing happened. So on the App Store. So App Store was 5 years old last week, and because of that, Apple put some games that were paid games, put them free for kind of like a celebration. And one of those ones was Infinity Blade 2. So Infinity Blade has always been a paid game with in-app purchases. Obviously pretty successful, but not as successful as a free-to-play games. But effectively, it's went free to play for that period of the promotion, which allowed companies like Distimo who do market analysis to kind of work out what effect that had. So they reckoned. So it seems pretty clear that it had about over 5 million downloads of the free version of Infinity Blade 2. 5.7 million, I think, is the correct figure, or the estimated correct figure. And obviously that would have generated, if that had happened at the $6 price, a certain chunk of money, but that's kind of by the by. But then what's happened is it's looked to see how Infinity Blade's taking that money out, how Infinity Blade's kind of top grossing kind of revenue has happened. So effectively people getting the game for free and then spending money with the in-app purchases, and they think it's so 2.4 times more revenue has been generated through in-app purchases in Infinity Blade 2 than was generated the previous week. I guess that kind of goes to show the power of free-to-play games. Although some people, there's always swings and roundabouts. So another big game release this week was Breach and Clear, which is from a new developer set up from the Call of Duty console developer, and they've been quite active about discussing how they looked to go free-to-play and didn't work out for the design of their game, so they've gone paid. So they're $2 for the game and it has in-app purchases in it, which seems I always think interesting if they're saying free-to-play wouldn't work if it was free, but we can do it paid with in-app purchases. I'm not sure quite how that game design thing rolls out, but we'll have to see. Certainly we'll be looking to see how the game kind of progresses in terms of its top grossing chart performance, and equally in terms of how well it's reviewing. So it's certainly plenty to look forward to. And just to highlight something we're starting to do on PocketGamer.biz now, which is called Monetizer, which is basically a kind of a section, I guess, a regular feature of the site now, where we're looking at the top 5 minutes. We're videoing the top 5 minutes, first 5 minutes of free-to-play games, effectively, and looking to see how the flow for users is in terms of how we've been taken into the game, what's the tutorial like, what kind of incentives have we been given to come back, how's the first kind of process of being taken into a store. These kind of aspects and techniques, which I think are becoming much more important and much more sophisticated for developers. So check that out, Monetizer, every week on PocketGamer.biz. See you next week.